Now, from Atlanta News First, the issues that matter to you. This is On the Record.
On the record this Sunday, a Georgia lawmaker is sounding the alarm about the problems she says are pushing her out of office. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene has just a few weeks left as a member of the U.S. House of Representatives. I'm Doug Reardon.
And I'm Rick Folbaum. Thanks for joining us. Greene, once one of President Donald Trump's biggest cheerleaders, announced her resignation from Congress after President Trump called her a traitor and promised to endorse a primary challenger against her in next year's midterm elections. Now, the rift between the two ramped up when Greene became one of the leading voices in Congress calling for the full release of the Epstein files, the documents surrounding the investigation into one of President Trump's former friends, convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein.
And Greene says the president's attacks on her character led to violent threats on her life and on her family's. And it's because of those threats and what she calls a toxic culture of politics that Congresswoman Greene told me she is leaving office when we sat down on the record. All right, well, Georgia Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, we really appreciate your time. Thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me on.
So I want to start, I have to go back to last month and first start by asking you about your resignation. You made that decision. You now have just a couple of days left really in Congress. What was it ultimately that made you want to make that decision to step down after years representing the 14th District?
Basically, when it came down to the president calling me a traitor because I stood with women, the Epstein survivors, that women who were raped when they were 14 and 16 years old. That's really been shocking, not only to myself, but very much so for the district and pretty much everyone that voted for the president. But I will make no apologies for standing with women who were raped. I think that's the right thing to do, and I'm sticking with it.
But it sounds like it really was the Epstein files that kind of caused this feud to become deep enough, this rift to become deep enough for you to want to take this step. But was there something that you saw in there that made it important for you to, bring it to this level?
It was purely that, standing with women who were victimized, raped, and trafficked. And that's just the right thing to do. I didn't need to see a single thing in a file or read anything that was confidential before that to make that decision. The shock is that the president fought me so hard about it. And he was angry at me for that. And he told me that people were going to get hurt.
When you say that the president told you that the release of the files could hurt people, is there any part of you that thinks that he could be one of those people?
I don't know. I'll go by with what the women have told me is they have never accused him. All the women that I've spoken to never accused him. So based on what they've said, I still say no. But I think it's more important about who are the people that he is protecting. And I think that's where the real danger lies.
You have, there's no question about it, received a lot of negative attention from the way the president has been calling you out, calling you a traitor, saying that you have gone rotten. You're getting threats to your family, your son. I mean, this is really scary stuff. How much blame do you put on the president and his words for stoking this?
I fully blame President Trump. And I sent those threats to him personally in a text message and addressed that matter very seriously, and his response was unspeakable. What he said to me, I'm not going to repeat it, but it was absolutely unreal. And he had no sympathy for me or my family. Mind you, don't forget, he's a billionaire president that is protected by Secret Service protection at all time, and his children and grandchildren are protected by Secret Service protection. Mine are not.
But do you think that some of the things that you said in the past may have led to some of this as well?
I think it's everyone have led to it. I think it's both sides, and I'm talking about this a lot. The toxic culture of politics has become extreme, and it's become extreme for both sides of the aisle. And so of course, it's easy for me to say, yes, I took part in this, but it's also extremely easy for me as a Christian to say, I don't want to have anything to do with that anymore, because I have seen firsthand over the past 5 years, the horrific results of it.
If you could go back and do it all over again, would you still support Donald Trump?
There are a myriad of reasons that I'm very glad that we won the election, and I would fight for it all over again. However, I can easily tell you that the President of the United States should never, ever call someone like me who fought for him so hard a traitor. And a traitor is a serious word, especially considering that right before he called me that, he himself brought the new Syrian president and wanted al-Qaeda leader with a $10 million bounty on his head up until March of this year. He brought that man into the White House and the Oval Office and lavished him with praise. And then he turned around and called me a traitor, sending unbelievable hate and death threats against me. So this is just the conduct that is extremely unbecoming of the President of the United States, and is also the conduct that I think Republican voters, as well as Democrat voters and independent voters, need to take a very hard look at.
What about you? What's next for you? I know you've already said you're not going to run for governor, you're not going to run for Senate, you have no plans to run for president. And so if not politics, then what is next?
You know, I really don't know. Up until 2020, I was very much a normal person. My life has always been very fulfilled through my family and my friends, and being very grounded in who I am. Do I know what I'm doing yet? I have no idea. I'm sure I'll take some time to get back with the people I love very much, and probably enjoy giving a little bit of me time to myself. But I'm sure I'll figure something out. I'm not one that enjoys sitting around and not doing anything.
And that is just one part of my conversation with Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. You can watch the full interview right now on the Atlanta News First YouTube channel.
Marjorie Taylor Greene's resignation doesn't take effect until January, but already there's a long line of candidates running to fill her District 14 seat representing Northwest Georgia. Whoever wins the special election on a date not yet announced will have big shoes to fill. And our panel joins us now. Courtney Kramer is chairwoman of Protecting Democracy PAC and former Republican nominee for Fulton County District Attorney. And Fal Sabak is here, senior managing director at Dentons. Thank you both for coming in and going on the record. We appreciate it. Courtney, let me start with you, because this feud between President Trump and Congresswoman Greene does not seem to be going away anytime soon. How does it color the race to replace her in Georgia 14?
Well, it's a great question, and I do want to say that I do think that she should not be resigning early at all for this race. For her seat, I think she should be finishing out her term. That's what her constituents elected her to do. You've had, her donors have paid millions and millions of dollars to have her there, and she should be staying until the end of her term, maybe just not running for re-election. That's fine, but she shouldn't be leaving that early. That's a game of politics that I'll touch on later. But it colors this race because you're going to see, and what you have seen, especially with Marjorie, is that when you don't agree with the president and you don't support his agenda, he's going to not attack you, but he's going to call you out on that. And Marjorie decided to go against his agenda. I don't think it's for the reasons that she's saying in your interview. Last spring, she decided there was conversations that she wanted to run for U.S. Senate. President Trump was not going to endorse her for that seat. She couldn't win Georgia based on the polling. She got mad. So now she's resigning early to mess up the midterms, to kind of mess up, future very important votes in Congress. And so it really colors the race that way. You're going to have somebody in that seat who supports the president's agenda and to reunite Republicans.
Yeah, and we'll come back to you on that in just a second. But speaking of the race, Democrats have had a lot of success lately with the Public Service Commission seats, just flipped the state seat in Athens. Is this a seat they could flip? And keeping in mind that this is a deeply red conservative,
Yeah, so this, like you said, it's a super conservative district. It's going to be very, very tough uphill battle for any Democrat that gets in. The benefit that the Democrats will have here was you'll have 4 or 5 people running in the Republican primary, and everybody's all on one ballot. And so there could be a scenario where a Democrat gets in through a runoff, and then the runoff is a totally different beast in terms of elections. Even in districts where the Democrats have been losing the past few, cycles, Democrats have been cutting into the margins closer and closer. So that'll be just something to kind of keep it's a good temperature check.
Yeah, maybe a good bellwether. So on the Republican side, we've already got a lot of people clamoring for this seat. The most recent state senator, Colton Moore, who is very cut in the vein of Marjorie Taylor Greene. What would a Republican need to do to kind of stand out among this field? What's the strategy there to win?
Well, you're going to have the endorsement from the White House. I think that's very important, especially with a race so large, and especially seeing how our special elections have gone in Georgia over the last year. The Democrats are cutting into the Republicans' elections here, but you're going to have that endorsement from Trump. You're going to have the White House say yes. And I have a strong feeling that they are going to weigh in on this race. I also think that you probably need somebody more like a Representative Katie Dempsey in this seat versus a Colton Moore. Colton has brought nothing but attention to himself, and not really for all the right reasons in Georgia, if I'm being honest. I mean, he is a fellow Republican, but does not mean I agree with everything he has done or the attention he has brought to the party. He has definitely brought some infighting in the party, and that needs to stop. And somebody like Katie Dempsey is a much more mild, level-headed representative for that district.
Fal, so Sean Harris, who ran against Marjorie Taylor Greene the last time around, has announced that he intends to run again in this special election. There may be others between now and then who get in the race as well. But what is a winning message for a Democrat in this part of the state? As Doug mentioned, this is a state that went for President Trump 30-plus points in the last election cycle. But we are seeing some of this messaging from Democrats in other parts of the country gaining traction. So what do you think?
I mean, right now, this election is affordability is the name of the game. And so if Democrats can keep hammering on that, they did it in the PSC races. They've been doing it in the state house level. If they can do it for that seat, I think that's the message that they have to focus on, especially with the rising healthcare costs that are coming up or looming over the American people. I think if they can focus on that messaging, I think that they could make a good case.
Yeah. All right. Well, stick around. We're going to have you guys back on. And when we do, we're going to talk about healthcare. Dueling votes this week aimed at helping you afford healthcare fails in Washington. The clock is ticking for Capitol Hill to come to an agreement.
Welcome back. On the record right now, a stunning election victory for Democrats in Georgia. Last week, a state House seat flipped in a deep red district. Democrat Eric Gisler defeated Republican Dutch Guest in a special election. Gisler won by just under 200 votes, and it came as an upset for Republicans in the district, which includes most of Oconee County and across Georgia. The special election was held to replace Republican Marcus Wiedauer in the state legislature. He resigned this fall to focus on business interests. Meantime, no one came out on top in a Cherokee County special election last Tuesday. 6 people were running for the House District 23 seat. Republican Bill Fincher and Democrat Scott Sanders were the top 2 vote getters in the special election. They will now go head-to-head in a runoff set for next month.
And if you live in certain parts of Fulton or Cobb counties, you have a chance to choose between who you want to represent you in the State House this week. A runoff election between Democrats Jaha Howard and Roger Bruce will determine who will take control of the District 35 seat. It is the one that Jason Estevez left empty when he resigned back in September to focus on his run for Georgia governor. And another influential lawmaker is leaving the Georgia Senate to campaign full-time. It's Republican State Senator John F. Kennedy. He resigned last week, less than a month before the start of the new legislative session. Kennedy is fighting to become Georgia's next lieutenant governor. He's represented District 18, which include parts of Bibb, Monroe, and Houston counties since 2014. A special election is now set for January 20th to fill his seat. And hey, you're not crazy if you think you've gone to the polls a lot this year. We certainly have. 2025 has been one. It's usually considered an off year, too. But since August, 5 special elections have been called to fill seats in the state legislature. 3 have gone to runoffs. And that is on top of the Municipal and Public Service Commission elections that turned out voters all across the entire state last month.
Open enrollment. It ends tomorrow for millions of Americans who get their health insurance through the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare marketplace.
And that includes more than 1 million Georgians who could see their premiums skyrocket in the new year. Last week, lawmakers in the U.S. Senate rejected 2 partisan bills on expiring Affordable Care Act subsidies. 93% of Georgians on the ACA marketplace depend on those credits to keep their coverage affordable. And legislation put forth by Senate Democrats would have extended the COVID-era tax credits for 3 years, while the GOP alternative would have replaced them with something similar to new health savings accounts. Each of those bills failed, with votes falling along party lines. And with no solution in sight, those subsidies are now set to expire on December 31st.
Georgia Democratic U.S. Senator Jon Ossoff voted for the 3-year extension of the subsidies. Last week, he warned his colleagues that failing to address health care could lead to deadly consequences. But Senate Republican leadership argues a straight extension is not the right fix.
The whole conversation about these Affordable Care Act tax credits in this town and this building has been focused on the politics of this issue. This is life or death. People will die.
You can't fix this program. I mean, you can't just do a blanket extension without reforms. It is rife with waste, fraud, and abuse.
And the panel's back now. Felt these health insurance premiums, these ACA tax credits, they were really at the center of the government shutdown. It's what they were fighting over. Do you think that there was any part of the Democratic strategy here that was maybe hoping for no deal so that they could use this as something to run on in the midterms?
I probably wouldn't say that they hoped that there was going to be no deal. I think they wanted a deal to extend the subsidies. Obviously, this is going to be a messaging battle, probably for as long as we can see at this point. But I don't think that there was ever a chance, because at the end of the day, the cost of healthcare is going to rise on millions of Americans. And I think that both parties don't want to get into that discussion, because it's, again, the name of the game is affordability. So if you're talking about affordability, my healthcare costs are going up. You know, I think that they need to figure out something, and they need to figure out something quick.
So, Courtney, this idea of extending the subsidies was something that Marjorie Taylor Greene actually said that she agreed with the Democrats. And there are other Republicans who have also gone on the record and said that they would like to see those subsidies extended. The White House doesn't seem to be interested. Leadership doesn't seem to be interested. What should Republican lawmakers in Washington do?
I think they should. You know, I would not take Marjorie's advice on this. She's playing politics. She's trying to make the president pretty mad. And the other Republicans who are saying that it should be extended for another 3 years, they also are up for re-election. So they have to think about their constituents and what their constituents are wanting, and probably getting some of those independents over on their side. However, extending it 3 years is not going to fix anything. We need at least a short-term fix right now, and that's what the president wants to do. Republicans had a proposal, it got shot down, to put money back in the pockets of Americans, hardworking Americans who are trying to afford health care for them and their families. And right now, no matter what, health care is going to increase. It does every single year. We all see it. So no matter what, it's going to increase. But the Dems are using this as a tool for these midterms. They're playing politics. You know, they probably get lots of millions of dollars from these lobbying firms for insurance to make this an issue. But a 3-year extension is not the answer.
All right, coming up, Fulton County DA Fani Willis says that she is finally ready to testify for a state Senate subcommittee. What to expect next on The Record.
This week, Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis says she will testify before the state Senate committee that is investigating her. It comes after a lengthy legal battle that made its way all the way up to the state Supreme Court. Lawmakers have been trying to question her for over a year while investigating that now dismissed election interference case against President Donald Trump. Willis has previously said the Senate committee did not have the authority to actually make her come in to testify. Her attorneys now calling it pointless now that the case against Trump was thrown out, but senators on the committee say it's about time.
The news of the day is that finally, after a year and a half of hiding, the DA Willis will appear before the committee on December 17th, and we look forward to getting to the bottom of what exactly happened.
This is moot. This case is moot. It is in bad faith. It should never have happened.
And the mostly Republican Senate panel wants to grill Willis on her relationship with the election indictment's top prosecutor, Nathan Wade. They say she may have financially benefited from naming him as the case lead. And we don't really know what the Supreme Court would have ruled. They didn't make a ruling that day. No one's forcing her to do this. What do you think was the change of heart here for the DA?
Look, I think that there's a lot of factors going into this decision, right? Where the case has already been dismissed. Supreme Court hasn't ruled yet, made a ruling yet. I think at this point, it's just like, let's show up, let's see what happens.
Courtney, you ran against DA Willis. What are you most looking forward to hearing from this testimony? What do you want to know?
Well, before the show, we were talking, and I said, you know, I would love to see a repeat of Ashley Merchant's cross-examination or direct of Fani from her testimony that day. But realistically, running against her, I got to learn a lot of things about the office and what was, you know, what we could fix, what you could change, you know, if I was incoming as the new DA. You know, and there was so many resources, so much money, so much time that was put into the president's faulty case, if I might add, that could have been used for other things to make Fulton County safe, to help the citizens of Fulton County, not to going to the benefit of her and her boyfriend. It's no question that she did benefit. That was very obvious in the documents that we saw. They went on lavish vacations together. They were always seen in public together, going on these trips that are, you know, a lot of these were funded by the taxpayers. And now Fulton County has to pay all of those, you know, attorney's fees, not her personally, it's the taxpayers of Fulton County. As a taxpayer myself, I'm pretty irritated that, you know, my money has to go to paying her mistake, and she knew that she was doing what she was doing was wrong, and it was a purely political move to prosecute President Trump. But I really want to know, the exact amount of time, money, and resources that was spent on that could have been used elsewhere.
Well, that'll be some testimony that everybody will be following in this week ahead. And that is our show. We want to thank our guests, Courtney Kramer and Fal Sabak. Thank you both.
Yes, and thanks, of course, to you for watching. We'll see you back here next Sunday.